This is True Crime Stories for Sleep. When you picture Alcatraz, the first images that come to mind are likely the forbidding walls, the fog-laden bay, and the isolation that made it one of the most secure prisons in the United States. Located on a rocky island off San Francisco, Alcatraz housed the nation's most notorious criminals, men who had caused mayhem on the mainland and were considered too dangerous or too clever for traditional correctional facilities. By the 1960s, the prison had gained a near-mythical reputation. Escape was deemed impossible. And yet, on the night of June 11, 1962, three men, Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin, managed to vanish from their cells in a feat that would captivate the world for decades. Before we continue, if you're fascinated by daring escapes and stories that push the limits of ingenuity, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment where you're listening from. Sharing your thoughts helps us bring more meticulously researched tales of audacity, skill, and human determination. Now, let's return to Alcatraz, where one of the most famous prison escapes in history began quietly, under the cover of darkness. The three men were not impulsive. They had spent months planning every detail. Their cells, located in the A block, were small, stark, and heavily monitored. Yet Morris and the Anglin brothers transformed these unremarkable rooms into the staging ground for their elaborate plan. Using spoons, saw blades, and makeshift tools scavenged from the prison workshop, they painstakingly chipped away at the walls behind their cells' ventilation grates. The sound was masked by the routine clatter of daily prison life, and their work remained invisible to guards who assumed the men were idle. The ingenuity of the escape extended beyond mere physical labor. The trio constructed a dummy head system, creating realistic replicas from a mixture of soap, toilet paper, and real human hair collected from haircuts. These heads, carefully painted and detailed, were placed in their beds each night, giving the illusion that they were asleep while they worked tirelessly behind the walls. This small but crucial detail prevented nighttime counts from revealing their absence, buying them valuable time. The escape plan required more than breaking through walls. It demanded navigation of the treacherous waters surrounding Alcatraz. The prisoners fashioned a raft and life vests from raincoats, assembling them meticulously in secret. Every knot, every seam was carefully tested. The goal was not just to leave the cell but to cross San Francisco Bay, a body of water notorious for frigid temperatures, strong currents, and unpredictable weather. The environment was as much a challenge as the walls and guards. On the night of the escape, the prisoners moved with careful precision. They dismantled sections of their cells, climbed into the utility corridor behind the ventilation openings, and scaled walls to reach the roof. The sound of wind and distant foghorns masked their movements as they descended to the shoreline. Their raft, improvised yet ingeniously functional, awaited, tied discreetly at the water's edge. The final step, the leap into the icy bay, was fraught with risk, yet they executed it with the calm born of months of preparation. What happened after that remains shrouded in mystery. Official investigations suggested that the men likely drowned in the treacherous waters. Their bodies never recovered. Yet the ingenuity, courage, and precision of their plan make it clear that survival, at least for some period, was possible. Eyewitness accounts and occasional unconfirmed sightings fueled speculation for years, turning the Alcatraz escape into a modern legend. The aftermath revealed the meticulous nature of the men's planning. Investigators recovered remnants of their raft and life vests on nearby shorelines, proving that the escape was executed exactly as intended up to the point of entering the water. The dummy heads had fooled guards long enough for the operation to remain undetected for critical hours. The entire sequence, from breaking through cell walls to launching the raft, was a testament to the combination of intellect, patience, and audacity. Alcatraz itself, once considered escape-proof, was exposed as vulnerable to human ingenuity. The escape prompted a reevaluation of prison security, both at Alcatraz and across the United States. Authorities enhanced guard training, increased patrols, and implemented more sophisticated monitoring systems, yet the story of the 1962 breakout continued to captivate the public imagination. It was not just a story of confinement. It was a narrative of cleverness, daring, and the relentless pursuit of freedom. Psychologists and criminologists have studied the Alcatraz escape extensively, noting the combination of traits that made it possible: patience, meticulous planning, risk management, and the ability to improvise under pressure. Unlike impulsive breakouts that often fail, Morris and the Anglin brothers approached every aspect of their plan logically, anticipating every obstacle and designing contingencies for each. Their actions were the embodiment of strategic thinking under extreme constraints. For decades, the Alcatraz escape has inspired books, films, and documentaries. It represents the pinnacle of prison break ingenuity, combining physical skill, psychological acumen, and daring innovation. The three men transformed a tiny, isolated cell into a launching pad for a legendary flight into freedom. Their story illustrates that even the most fortified institutions can be circumvented when intellect, patience, and courage are applied creatively. Today, the Alcatraz escape is studied not only as a historical event but as a lesson in human resourcefulness. Visitors to the island can see the cells, the ventilation grates, and the surrounding waters that formed both barrier and battleground. The story endures because it transcends simple criminality. It is a narrative of audacity, preparation, and the profound desire for freedom. The legend of Morris, John, and Clarence Anglin reminds us that the limits of human ingenuity often exceed the walls and fences designed to contain it. Whether they survive the bay or succumb to its treacherous currents, their escape remains one of the most remarkable demonstrations of courage, calculation, and the will to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. In the annals of criminal history, the Alcatraz escape stands as an enduring symbol of defiance, imagination, and the extraordinary lengths to which humans will go to claim freedom. Stalag Luft 3 was no ordinary prison. Located near the small town of Sagan, in what was then Nazi Germany, now Zagan, Poland, it was designed specifically to house captured Allied airmen, men deemed too resourceful to remain in standard POW camps. The Germans believed its meticulous design would make escape virtually impossible: high security fences, raised watchtowers, guards with dogs, and a camp built on sandy soil designed to collapse tunnels under weight or scrutiny. Yet in the spring of 1944, a group of determined prisoners orchestrated one of history's most audacious escapes, an operation so intricate that it became immortalized in legend as the Great Escape. From the outset, the prisoners recognized that conventional breakout attempts would fail. Escape required innovation, patience, and collaboration. Under the leadership of squadron leader Roger Bushell, the men organized themselves into specialized teams: diggers, forgers, tailors, scouts, and intelligence gatherers. Each man had a precise role, honed to perfection over months of preparation. The scale of the operation was staggering. It involved not just a single tunnel but a coordinated effort to craft multiple tunnels simultaneously, dubbed Tom, Dick, and Harry, as if to disguise their seriousness with humor. Daily life at Stalag Luft 3 masked the secret labor happening beneath the sand. Prisoners attended roll calls, participated in drills, and maintained the appearance of compliance. Yet beneath the floors of their huts, men were digging, shoring up tunnels with bedboards, and disposing of sand in ingenious ways, often scattering it inconspicuously in gardens, hallways, or their clothing to be released during exercise periods. Every shovel of sand represented both risk and meticulous calculation. Discovery meant death or immediate transfer, but the prisoners persevered with relentless precision. The tunnels themselves were engineering marvels. They stretched over 300 feet, reinforced with timber scavenged from beds, and featured crude but functional ventilation systems using tin cans and pipes to maintain airflow. Lighting was improvised, using wiring scavenged from the camp's limited electrical resources. Escape required not only physical effort but mechanical innovation, improvisation, and a careful understanding of physics and geology. Each tunnel was a race against time, as German inspections and shifting soil conditions constantly threatened the prisoners' work. False ceilings and cleverly concealed entry points ensured the tunnels remained hidden. The work often involved digging in near-total darkness, confined spaces so narrow that men had to wriggle forward inch by inch. Injuries, fatigue, and the ever-present threat of collapse tested both physical endurance and morale. Yet camaraderie and meticulous coordination kept the project alive. Escapees practiced silent communication, mapping out patrol patterns and memorizing routes to reduce exposure during the final breakout. When the night of the escape arrived, March 24th to 25th, 1944, over 70 men were ready to risk everything. The operation was carefully timed to coincide with minimal guard attention, exploiting gaps in observation and routine distractions. Prisoners crawled through tunnels, emerging under the cover of darkness, one at a time. Many carried forged papers, civilian clothing, and maps meticulously prepared in advance, essential tools for navigating wartime Germany undetected. However, the escape was fraught with peril. Not every man made it beyond the camp. Some were recaptured almost immediately, others fell victim to the unforgiving terrain or the alertness of German patrols. Of the 76 men who escaped, only 3 successfully reached Allied lines, a testament to both the audacity and the difficulty of survival once outside the camp. The Germans responded brutally. Over 50 escapees were executed in reprisal, a grim reminder of the stakes involved. Despite the tragic outcomes, the Great Escape remains a testament to human ingenuity, organization, and courage under extreme conditions. Prisoners demonstrated exceptional skill in engineering, logistics, and covert operations. They turned a hopeless environment into a stage for strategic action, proving that even in captivity, resourcefulness and planning could create opportunities where none seemed to exist. The escape also involved psychological warfare. The prisoners understood the importance of morale, secrecy, and deception. Guards were misled through small diversions, false rumors, and staged activities, ensuring that their focus was temporarily diverted from the true operation. Every detail, from the disposal of sand to the selection of exit points, reflected careful study of human behavior as much as physical structures. Post-escape investigations revealed the extraordinary scale of the operation. Tunnels, tools, and documents meticulously hidden in the camp were uncovered, each piece a fragment of the complex web of planning. Allies and historians alike marveled at the organization required. Men had not only engineered tunnels but coordinated a system of communication, supply distribution, and contingency planning that rivaled military operations. The Great Escape has endured in popular culture for decades. Books, films, and documentaries have depicted the event, emphasizing the blend of daring, skill, and tragedy that defined it. While dramatizations often highlight the cinematic aspects, the reality was a combination of scientific ingenuity, courage, and strategic patience. Men who had faced the peril of aerial combat now faced confinement, yet they applied the same precision and discipline to escape, a fight for freedom executed with professional rigor. Stalag Luft 3 itself became a symbol, not of confinement, but of resistance. The escape demonstrated that even in the most controlled, technologically secure environments, human creativity and determination could subvert authority. The meticulous planning, engineering ingenuity, and unyielding courage of the escapees ensured that their story would endure as a landmark in the history of prison breaks. Even today, visitors to the site in Zagan can see the remnants of huts, tunnels, and barracks, imagining the silent effort, the whispered coordination, and the meticulous work of men committed to freedom. The Great Escape exemplifies the timeless appeal of escapes, a blend of intellect, courage, and audacity against formidable odds. It reminds us that even in captivity, human initiative and ingenuity can carve paths to freedom where none seem possible. The legacy of the Great Escape lies not only in the number of men who fled but in the inspiration it provided to generations afterward. It is a story of resistance against tyranny, of courage under extreme adversity, and of the extraordinary lengths individuals will go to reclaim agency over their lives. The technical skill, the careful observation, and the unity of purpose all coalesce to create a breakout remembered as one of history's most daring and sophisticated escapes. Perched atop a rocky cliff in Saxony, Germany, Colditz Castle was a centuries-old fortress that, during World War II, became the infamous Auflage Forcy, a high-security prison for Allied officers deemed escape-prone. The Germans considered it escape-proof. Its high walls, steep drops, and watchful guards created an environment that seemed impossible to breach. Yet for the prisoners inside, Colditz was not merely a place of confinement. It was a challenge, a testing ground for ingenuity, patience, and daring. Over the course of the war, the castle would witness some of the most audacious and ingenious escapes ever recorded. The castle's reputation as a fortress of impossibility stemmed from both its natural and architectural advantages. Its position on a rocky promontory offered panoramic views of the surrounding countryside, making it nearly impossible to approach unnoticed. Inside, the walls were thick, the gates reinforced, and the perimeter patrolled relentlessly. Guards were armed and vigilant, knowing that escape-minded officers could create problems far beyond the castle walls. Yet, paradoxically, these very defenses provided prisoners with both a psychological and physical canvas on which to devise their strategies. All escapes began with careful observation. Officers inside Colditz learned to study patrol patterns, identify blind spots, and catalog guard routines. Every moment outside cell or dormitory time was an opportunity to gather intelligence. They noted the timing of patrols, the positioning of searchlights, and even the guards' personal quirks. This intelligence became the foundation for each meticulously planned attempt, demonstrating that in Colditz, ingenuity often outweighed brute strength. The prisoners devised a remarkable variety of escape methods. One of the most famous involved the French escape of 1941, when Lieutenant Dominique André and his compatriots constructed a wooden ladder and rope system to descend the cliffside walls. They timed the descent to avoid patrols, using darkness and fog as cover. The climb down the cliff tested both physical endurance and courage. A single misstep could have meant a fatal fall. Yet the officers succeeded, disappearing into the surrounding forests, and eventually reaching Allied lines. Another legendary attempt relied on disguise and social engineering. Some prisoners crafted uniforms, forged documents, and civilian clothing to blend into German towns. One officer, posing as a German soldier, walked confidently through the castle gates, exploiting the guards' assumptions and the trust placed in uniformed authority. The courage and audacity required were immense. A single miscalculation could have ended the escape abruptly, yet several officers succeeded using deception, patience, and keen observation of human behavior. Perhaps the most technically ambitious attempts involved tunneling and hidden passages. Prisoners covertly dug beneath floors, shoring tunnels with bedboards, and carefully disposing of debris in gardens or hidden spaces. These tunnels had to be meticulously engineered to prevent collapse, all while avoiding detection during daily inspections. The work was painstaking, often carried out in the dark, confined spaces of Colditz's corridors. The physical and mental discipline required was extraordinary, with each digger contributing precise labor to ensure collective success. Colditz also became a laboratory for creativity. Escapees experimented with makeshift gliders, miniature winches, and other devices designed to bypass walls, gates, and guard towers. One glider, constructed in secret within the attic, was designed to fly prisoners over the perimeter. Though it was never used due to the approaching end of the war, its existence highlights the extraordinary level of planning, innovation, and technical skill that defined Colditz's escapes. Men used limited resources, bed sheets, floorboards, and scavenged tools, to construct devices that rivaled early aeronautical engineering. Psychological tactics were equally important. Officers understood the importance of morale, misdirection, and secrecy. Rumors were spread intentionally, movements were timed to coincide with distractions, and the prisoners maintained the facade of conformity to mask the scale of their plans. By carefully managing both the environment and human perception, the prisoners could operate within a heavily controlled system without raising suspicion. Despite the ingenuity, success was far from guaranteed. Many escape attempts failed, resulting in recapture or punishment. Yet even failure provided lessons. Every attempt, whether successful or thwarted, contributed to knowledge about patrol patterns, weaknesses in security, and methods of concealment. The iterative nature of planning and execution ensured that each new escape built upon the lessons of the last. The human element was critical. Escapes were rarely solo endeavors. They relied on teamwork, trust, and coordination. Officers supported one another, sharing tools, intelligence, and encouragement. The sense of solidarity transformed confinement into a shared mission, with success contingent not only on skill and courage but also on collective discipline and mutual reliance. This camaraderie and ingenuity became a hallmark of Colditz, reinforcing the idea that the mind could outmaneuver walls and guards alike. Colditz's legacy is also one of inspiration. The stories of escapes, documented in memoirs, reports, and later films, highlight the extraordinary capabilities of human creativity under pressure. Prisoners demonstrated that confinement could be a catalyst for innovation, turning adversity into opportunity. The combination of engineering, psychology, physical endurance, and risk-taking culminated in escapes that were as elegant as they were daring. The castle remained a symbol of both control and defiance. Its imposing walls could imprison the body, but never fully the spirit. The ingenuity displayed by the officers reflected broader truths about human adaptability. When faced with impossible odds, creativity, observation, and determination can yield extraordinary results. Even decades later, Colditz continues to captivate historians and enthusiasts, a testament to the enduring fascination with audacious escapes. As the war progressed, Colditz became synonymous with ingenuity. Prisoners applied both practical and abstract skills, blending carpentry, engineering, psychology, and stealth into operations that were almost surgical in precision. Each successful escape carried lessons for future prisoners and remains a case study in adaptive problem-solving, risk management, and teamwork. The human mind, confined yet unbroken, proved capable of extraordinary feats when properly applied. Colditz Castle, long after its role as a prison ended, stands as a monument to the extraordinary lengths humans will go to reclaim freedom. From hidden tunnels to daring cliff descents, gliders to disguises, the stories from its walls illuminate the extraordinary interplay between resourcefulness and courage. The escapes, successful and failed alike, continue to be celebrated for their audacity, precision, and ingenuity, cementing Colditz as a legendary stage in the history of prison breaks. In the annals of escape history, Colditz demonstrates that no matter how secure a prison appears, human intelligence and adaptability remain formidable forces. The officers who dared, planned, and risked everything transformed captivity into a canvas for creativity and courage. Their actions remind us that the greatest escapes are not only physical acts of flight, but also triumphs of intellect, patience, and the indomitable human spirit. The idea of a prison break often conjures images of scaling walls, tunneling under fences, or slipping away under cover of night. Yet in France, during the early 2000s, a series of audacious escapes redefined the genre entirely, prisoners using helicopters as vehicles of liberation. Among the most infamous of these escape artists was Pascal Payet, a man whose charisma, cunning, and technical ingenuity allowed him to orchestrate some of the most remarkable prison breaks in modern European history. Before we delve into the mechanics of these extraordinary escapes, consider the audacity required. A helicopter is not merely a mode of transportation, it is a symbol of speed, precision, and exposure. To commandeer one, navigate a secure airspace, and extract prisoners from the very heart of incarceration requires not only daring but meticulous planning, coordination, and the ability to manipulate both human behavior and mechanical systems. Pascal Payet would accomplish this not once, but multiple times, rewriting the rulebook on what escape could look like. Payet, born in 1963, had a criminal career defined by violent robbery, firearms offenses, and multiple convictions. By the turn of the millennium, he had become well known within the French penal system, not just for his crimes, but for his repeated attempts at escape. His first helicopter-assisted breakout occurred in 2001, at the Lens prison, a facility considered secure by conventional standards. Collaborators on the outside had planned the operation meticulously. A helicopter hovered above the prison yard, dodging surveillance and guided by a precise schedule. Payet boarded with astonishing speed, and within minutes he was airborne, leaving the facility, and the authorities, in disbelief. The brilliance of the operation lay not just in its execution, but in its psychological impact. French authorities had never encountered a method so direct, so visually bold, and so difficult to counter. Prison guards had been trained to manage riots, tunneling, and smuggling, but an aerial extraction? That required an entirely new way of thinking about prison security. Payet's audacity forced the system to rethink how to anticipate and prevent future incidents. In 2003, Payet repeated the stunt. This time, he had been incarcerated at Gras Prison, and the helicopter escape was even more sophisticated. A helicopter landed in the prison yard, using a combination of deception and timing to minimize confrontation. Payet boarded effortlessly while guards were distracted, and the craft whisked him away before any intervention could occur. The audacity of taking flight literally above the eyes of authorities created a level of spectacle and embarrassment unmatched in modern criminal history. These escapes were not solo efforts. Payet relied on an external network of accomplices who understood aviation, navigation, and communication. The coordination required was extraordinary. Timing had to be precise, as delays could lead to interception by police helicopters or radar detection. Each operation involved scouting, rehearsals, and contingency planning. Payet's success was a testament to the intersection of meticulous preparation, human daring, and technical expertise. The ingenuity extended beyond helicopters themselves. On multiple occasions, Payet managed to coordinate secondary escapes, helping fellow prisoners flee using the same method. His 2007 operation at the Frains prison allowed 3 additional inmates to escape in a helicopter while he remained outside the system of capture, demonstrating both his organizational skill and his influence over a criminal network capable of executing aerial operations under intense scrutiny. Authorities scrambled in response, increasing airspace monitoring, installing roof barriers, and even creating specialized response teams to prevent similar incidents. Yet Payet's actions proved that conventional security protocols were inadequate when confronted with unconventional thinking. The very act of escaping by helicopter challenged assumptions about containment, visibility, and control, highlighting how innovation can outpace institutional rigidity. The dramatic nature of these escapes captured global attention. News outlets broadcast images of helicopters landing within prison yards, inmates ascending into the air while guards shouted in helpless astonishment, and police forces deploying rapidly in a frantic attempt to intercept the fugitives. Payet became an almost legendary figure, a criminal whose methods blurred the lines between ingenuity and audacity, daring and recklessness. Psychologists analyzing his behavior suggested that Payet combined several traits that made his escapes possible: meticulous planning, an ability to anticipate human behavior, and a willingness to embrace extreme risk. Unlike impulsive criminals, he approached each operation strategically, ensuring that the likelihood of success outweighed the dangers. The helicopter was not just a tool, it was a calculated extension of his intelligence, resourcefulness, and understanding of systemic vulnerabilities. Yet, despite his repeated successes, the consequences were inevitable. Payet was recaptured multiple times, and each escape resulted in harsher sentences and increased security measures. But his legacy remained intact. He had demonstrated, repeatedly, that innovation and boldness could outmaneuver even highly secure systems. His exploits forced French authorities, and the global penal system, to reconsider the boundaries of prison security, illustrating that conventional thinking could be undermined by audacious, technically sophisticated approaches. The story of Pascal Payet's helicopter escapes is also a narrative of spectacle and psychology. It was not only the physical act of leaving the prison that captured attention, but the audacity to do so publicly, in a way that mocked conventional assumptions about containment. Payet leveraged visibility, speed, and surprise to create a psychological advantage over his captors, transforming the escape into both a logistical and symbolic victory. Beyond the headlines, these escapes are studied today for their demonstration of strategic innovation under constraints. Payet operated within a system designed to restrict movement and limit options, yet he identified and exploited weaknesses with precision. His understanding of timing, human behavior, and mechanical tools allowed him to execute operations that, while illegal and dangerous, showcased an extraordinary application of intelligence and resourcefulness. The helicopter escapes also influenced popular culture, inspiring films, documentaries, and literature exploring the limits of ingenuity in the face of confinement. They serve as enduring examples of how human daring, collaboration, and technical skill can intersect to produce feats that seem almost cinematic in scale. Unlike conventional escapes, which rely on stealth or force, Payet's method demonstrated creativity and coordination on a level that challenged assumptions about what was possible. By 2007, Payet had completed several successful helicopter-assisted escapes and assisted others in their flight from confinement. The story of his exploits remains a case study in the audacity of human ingenuity, the exploitation of systemic weaknesses, and the capacity for meticulously planned operations to overcome even the most secure barriers. It is a narrative that combines criminality with strategy, daring with calculation, and risk with exceptional skill. The legacy of Pascal Payet's helicopter escapes endures because they redefine what we consider possible in the context of confinement. They illustrate the potential of combining technical skill, psychological insight, and meticulous planning to achieve what many deemed impossible. In the annals of prison break history, Payet's aerial escapes stand out not just for their boldness, but for their demonstration of the extraordinary capacity of human resourcefulness in the face of extreme constraints. Sobibor was no ordinary prison. It was a Nazi extermination camp, a place designed for the systematic murder of Jews, Romani, and other targeted groups during the Holocaust. Located in eastern Poland, Sobibor was part of Operation Reinhard, the secretive plan to eliminate millions. Its gates were guarded not just physically but ideologically. Fear, violence, and the terror of annihilation ensured compliance. Yet in October 1943, a group of prisoners managed one of the most daring and consequential uprisings in history, a revolt that combined ingenuity, courage, and an almost unimaginable willingness to risk everything for freedom. Before we continue, remember that stories of escape in the context of death camps are not tales of adventure. They are narratives of survival against impossible odds. If you're drawn to stories of resistance and extraordinary courage, subscribe, like, and comment where you're listening from. The Sobibor Revolt is a testament to human resilience, the will to survive, and the power of careful planning and collective action, even in the darkest circumstances. Now, step inside Sobibor, where oppression and ingenuity collided in a desperate bid for life. The prisoners at Sobibor faced conditions beyond comprehension. They were forced to perform grueling labor, witness the execution of fellow captives, and endure constant surveillance by heavily armed SS guards. The camp was designed with efficiency in mind. Fences, watchtowers, and barbed wire constrained every movement, while punishment for disobedience was swift and lethal. Escape, in this environment, seemed inconceivable. Yet the prisoners, many of whom were trained in trades or had military experience, began quietly planning, motivated by both desperation and hope. The revolt was organized under the leadership of Alexander Petchersky, a Soviet Jew and former Red Army officer. Petchersky's background in military tactics and leadership proved critical. He recognized that brute force alone would be insufficient. The plan required deception, precision, and coordination. The goal was simple in concept but terrifying in execution: eliminate the SS officers, arm themselves with the camp's limited weaponry, and guide as many prisoners as possible beyond the fences into the surrounding forests. The execution of the plan required meticulous preparation. Prisoners secretly fashioned weapons, including axes and knives, scavenged from workshops and supply rooms. They observed guard routines, identified vulnerabilities in the camp's layout, and coordinated a timetable for action. Timing was everything. Any misstep could result in immediate death. The revolt had to be both swift and decisive, using the element of surprise to overcome the camp's heavily armed occupants. On October 14, 1943, the prisoners made their move. They lured SS officers individually into workshops under the pretense of routine duties and struck them down quietly, one by one. The element of surprise was crucial. Hesitation would have been fatal. As the revolt unfolded, prisoners seized weapons, set fire to buildings to create confusion, and made a coordinated dash for the fences. The plan relied on a mixture of stealth, aggression, and improvisation, with Petchersky directing operations from a central point. The escapees faced immediate and deadly obstacles. The camp was surrounded by barbed wire, watchtowers, and patrolling guards. Some prisoners scaled fences, others crawled under them, and still others blended into the confusion to slip through openings. Not everyone survived the attempt. Some were shot by guards, while others were caught in the chaos of the uprising. Yet the determination of the group and the careful coordination allowed a significant number of prisoners to break free. Estimates vary, but approximately 300 prisoners escaped during the revolt, though many were later recaptured or killed. Around 50 survived the war, a number that underscores both the extraordinary courage required and the extreme peril involved. The success of the operation lay not only in the number who escaped but in the fact that the revolt disrupted operations at the camp and sent a powerful message to both captors and victims. Even in the most controlled and terrifying environments, resistance was possible. The Sobibor revolt was remarkable for several reasons. First, it demonstrated that careful planning and coordination could overcome the most seemingly insurmountable odds. Second, it illustrated the critical importance of leadership under pressure. Petruski's ability to organize, motivate, and guide his fellow prisoners was central to the revolt's partial success. Finally, it revealed the extraordinary resilience of human beings in the face of systemic violence. The prisoners risked everything for a chance at life. The revolt also had lasting consequences. The Nazis, shaken by the uprising, decided to dismantle Sobibor entirely within months, erasing the physical camp from the landscape. They recognized that even a small number of survivors could testify to the atrocities committed, and that the prisoners' audacity had undermined their sense of control. In this sense, the revolt was both a tactical and symbolic victory. Historians have studied the uprising extensively, noting the combination of strategic thinking, improvisation, and courage that enabled it. Prisoners turned the tools of their oppression, workshops, guards' routines, and the camp's layout, into instruments of liberation. The revolt underscores a broader truth, that ingenuity and determination can challenge even the most lethal systems. For survivors and their descendants, the Sobibor revolt represents a story of hope, resistance, and defiance. It is remembered not only as a remarkable escape, but as an assertion of dignity and humanity in circumstances designed to erase both. The courage required to rise up in such conditions, armed with little more than wits and scavenged weapons, resonates as a testament to human resilience. The escapees' journey did not end with the fences. Many had to navigate forests, avoid patrols, and seek help in hostile territories. Survival depended on knowledge of terrain, quick thinking, and occasionally the assistance of sympathetic locals. The ordeal extended for days, even weeks, beyond the initial breakout, illustrating that escape is not a singular act but a process requiring sustained skill, endurance, and luck. Sobibor remains a symbol of resistance within the Holocaust narrative. It shows that even in places designed for systematic dehumanization, human agency could manifest in acts of courage and defiance. The revolt, meticulously planned and heroically executed, remains one of the most extraordinary prison escapes not only of World War II but of human history. The revolt's legacy endures in memoirs, historical studies, and commemorations, preserving the memory of those who risked, and often lost, their lives to reclaim freedom. Their courage continues to inspire those who study resilience, strategy, and moral fortitude under extreme conditions. Sobibor is a reminder that escape is not merely a physical act, but an assertion of agency, hope, and the irrepressible will to survive against all odds. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, leader of the Sinaloa cartel, was notorious not only for his criminal empire but for his extraordinary ability to evade capture and escape from some of Mexico's most secure prisons. His escapes in 2001 and 2015 were bold, meticulously planned, and executed with a combination of engineering ingenuity, careful coordination, and audacity that captured global attention. These breakouts transformed him from a feared drug lord into a legend of modern prison escapes. El Chapo's first major prison escape occurred in 2001 at the Puente Grande Federal Penitentiary, a maximum security facility in Jalisco. By this point, Guzman had become an extremely high-value prisoner. The Mexican authorities were eager to demonstrate control over the country's drug trafficking crisis, and Puente Grande was supposed to symbolize that authority. Yet even the most secure walls and surveillance systems could not contain him. The escape was neither sudden nor spontaneous. El Chapo leveraged his extensive criminal network and corrupt prison contacts. Bribes, threats, and influence over guards allowed him to move with a freedom that outsiders could not comprehend. Accounts indicate that over months, he coordinated with people inside and outside the facility, laying the groundwork for a getaway that would exploit both human and structural weaknesses. On January 19, 2001, El Chapo vanished from his cell. Reports suggest he used a laundry cart to exit the facility, taking advantage of the routine movements of staff and supplies. The operation was precise, exploiting blind spots in surveillance, and relying on the complicity of certain prison personnel. By the time guards realized he was gone, he was already en route to a safe house, and the Mexican authorities were left scrambling to mount a response. This first escape revealed the scale of Guzman's influence. It was a demonstration not only of audacity but of the power of networks and planning. He had turned the prison itself into a tool for his freedom, exploiting both the human and material resources available. The operation's success hinged on the seamless combination of observation, timing, and manipulation. El Chapo's second escape in 2015 was even more spectacular, highlighting his understanding of engineering, logistics, and security oversight. He was being held in the Altiplano prison, one of Mexico's highest security facilities, located in the mountains near Toluca. The prison was designed to prevent exactly the sort of escape Guzman would execute, with strict surveillance, limited movement, and high walls monitored by guards. This escape, however, relied on a far more technically sophisticated approach. A tunnel, over a mile long, had been excavated leading directly into his cell's shower area. The tunnel was equipped with lighting, ventilation, and even a motorcycle mounted on tracks to move dirt and supplies. The construction of such a tunnel required months of labor, extreme secrecy, and remarkable engineering skill, all coordinated by his cartel associates outside the prison. The 2015 escape occurred during the early morning hours, a time chosen to minimize guard activity and reduce the risk of observation. Guzman climbed into the tunnel, descending into the underground passage that had been carefully carved beneath the prison. The operation combined elements of stealth, precision engineering, and an intimate understanding of the prison's layout. By the time guards discovered his absence, he had already emerged outside the facility and was en route to freedom. El Chapo's escapes were notable not just for their audacity, but for the integration of logistics, technology, and human manipulation. His 2015 escape, in particular, demonstrated a mastery of structural engineering principles. Ventilation, lighting, and structural integrity had all been considered in the tunnel's design. The combination of human ingenuity, technical skill, and criminal coordination created a breakout that was as much an engineering marvel as a criminal act. The global reaction was immediate. Media outlets around the world covered the escape, marveling at the sophistication and audacity involved. Mexican authorities faced widespread criticism, as the escapes exposed corruption, security lapses, and the challenge of containing high-value criminal figures. For El Chapo, the escapes cemented his reputation as a man who could outthink, outmaneuver, and literally tunnel beneath the most secure confinement. Psychologists and criminologists analyzing these escapes note several key traits in Guzman's methods: patience, strategic foresight, resource management, and the ability to manipulate human systems. Unlike impulsive criminals who act without planning, Guzman's operations were meticulously designed to maximize success while minimizing risk. He transformed a prison, designed to restrict movement, into a conduit for his freedom, using every available asset, human, mechanical, and environmental, to achieve his goal. Both escapes had lasting consequences for Mexico's prison system. Security protocols were re-evaluated, surveillance technology was upgraded, and oversight procedures were strengthened. Yet even with these changes, Guzman's escapes revealed an essential truth about confinement: the combination of human ingenuity, technical skill, and outside networks can overcome even the most secure walls. The escapes also provide insight into the psychology of high-stakes risk-taking. Guzman's willingness to exploit human weakness, infrastructure gaps, and technological solutions highlights a calculated approach to risk, where every move is measured and rehearsed. He demonstrated that successful escapes are rarely spontaneous. They require meticulous observation, long-term planning, and the ability to anticipate and manipulate the behavior of both guards and the surrounding environment. In the end, El Chapo's 2001 and 2015 escapes became defining moments in modern criminal history. They illustrate the intersection of audacity, planning, and ingenuity, elevating prison escape from a desperate flight to a meticulously orchestrated operation. They highlight the extreme lengths to which determined individuals can go to reclaim freedom, and, in doing so, challenge conventional security systems. El Chapo's story also reminds us that prison breaks are not merely physical acts. They are demonstrations of strategy, intelligence, and psychological acumen. Whether using a laundry cart, exploiting guard routines, or navigating a mile-long tunnel, Guzman exemplified the capacity of human planning and creativity to overcome constraints that many would deem insurmountable. For historians, criminologists, and those fascinated by ingenuity under pressure, El Chapo's escapes serve as case studies in preparation, risk assessment, and operational execution. They remind us that no system is perfect, and that the combination of intelligence, audacity, and coordination can circumvent even the most formidable barriers. In the annals of prison escape history, the two breakouts executed by Joaquin, El Chapo, Guzman stand out not only for their audacity but for their sophistication and impact. They remain defining examples of how human ingenuity, when combined with resources, planning, and daring, can achieve what seems impossible: freedom from the most secure prisons on Earth. In the 1980s, deep within Brazil's Amazon region, a prison stood as a stark testament to isolation and confinement. Surrounded by dense jungle, treacherous rivers, and near impenetrable foliage, the facility was designed to break both body and spirit. Guards patrolled its perimeter with rifles, dogs roamed the compound, and escape seemed a near impossible dream. Yet within this environment, a man named Antonio Ferreira executed one of the most remarkable prison escapes in South American history, a feat that combined courage, ingenuity, and a profound understanding of both the natural and human landscapes around him. Antonio Ferreira, a convicted bank robber and figure involved in organized crime, had been sentenced to decades behind bars. The prison itself was often described as a hybrid of isolation and jungle exposure. Inmates were confined physically within walls, yet the dense Amazon offered both a challenge and, paradoxically, a potential pathway to freedom. For Ferreira, escape required a combination of stealth, knowledge of the terrain, and precise timing. The plan began long before any movement toward the jungle. Ferreira observed the routines of guards, studying patrol schedules, their response times, and moments of distraction. He noted the rotation of sentries, the timing of meals, and the narrow windows when sections of the prison were less monitored. Every detail was recorded in his mind, a mental map of opportunity that would prove essential. Preparation was painstaking. Ferreira fashioned tools from available materials. Metal scraps were sharpened into makeshift knives, ropes were braided from bedding, and flotation devices were improvised using barrels and empty containers. Unlike conventional prison escapes, this one required not only evasion of human surveillance but also survival in a hostile, untamed wilderness, a dual challenge demanding both planning and resourcefulness. On the night of the escape, Ferreira exploited a rare lapse in security. Guards had been distracted by an internal disturbance, giving him the precise window needed. Using his handmade tools, he silently cut through bars and scaled walls, emerging on the threshold of the jungle that surrounded the prison. Unlike urban or semi-urban prisons, the Amazon was both a shield and a threat. Ferreira would be invisible to the outside world but exposed to the dangers of wildlife, treacherous terrain, and the sheer impossibility of human navigation through dense forest. The jungle escape required every ounce of Ferreira's physical skill and mental acuity. Moving silently, avoiding rivers and wildlife, and navigating by the stars and memory, he began a multi-day journey through a region few outsiders could traverse. His survival depended on improvisation. He drank from streams, identified edible plants, and evaded natural hazards. In essence, the escape was not merely a physical flight from prison but a test of endurance, resilience, and ingenuity against both man-made and natural obstacles. Local authorities were quickly alerted, but the search was hampered by the jungle itself. Helicopters provided aerial observation, but dense canopy limited visibility. Ground patrols struggled against the terrain, often forced to move cautiously along narrow trails, while Ferreira, familiar with jungle navigation, stayed hidden. His success was not only in escaping the prison walls but in mastering the environment that surrounded it, a dual challenge that highlighted both his ingenuity and courage. Ferreira's escape also demonstrated the psychological aspects of confinement and freedom. Prison walls may constrain the body, but the human mind, when driven by determination and ingenuity, can find opportunities where none seem to exist. He combined observation, careful timing, and knowledge of both human and environmental factors to exploit gaps in a system designed to be absolute. The jungle, simultaneously a prison and a pathway, became his ally. The journey was arduous. Days turned into nights as Ferreira moved silently, avoiding rivers that could sweep him away and predators that could end his flight. Food and water were scarce, requiring constant improvisation and a deep understanding of survival techniques. Yet, every step taken in darkness brought him closer to freedom, reinforcing the idea that escape is both a physical and psychological endeavor, a test of endurance, resourcefulness, and courage. Ferreira's successful evasion from authorities captivated both the local press and criminal historians. The audacity of escaping from a high-security prison into one of the most challenging environments on the planet became a story studied for its combination of daring, tactical planning, and survival skills. It was not simply a story of breaking bars. It was an epic of human ingenuity and resilience in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Beyond the physical escape, Ferreira's actions highlighted the importance of improvisation and adaptability. Plans rarely survive contact with reality intact, especially in an environment as unpredictable as the Amazon. Yet Ferreira was able to adjust on the fly, responding to obstacles, avoiding patrols, and navigating a complex natural landscape. This ability to adapt, mental agility under extreme stress, was as crucial as any tool or rope in his escape. The aftermath of Ferreira's breakout had profound implications for Brazilian prison systems. Authorities recognized that conventional security measures, walls, patrols, and surveillance, were insufficient when the environment itself could be manipulated by a resourceful prisoner. Steps were taken to improve monitoring, limit outside assistance, and reevaluate the balance between containment and geography. Yet Ferreira's story remained an enduring example of ingenuity overcoming both human and natural barriers. Historically, Ferreira's escape is significant not only for its technical success but for its broader demonstration of human resilience. He navigated a complex, hostile environment, evaded a coordinated search, and ultimately achieved freedom against seemingly impossible odds. Unlike conventional escapes, which rely on tools or deception alone, this breakout combined observation, strategy, improvisation, and survival skills, a holistic approach that continues to inspire those studying extreme problem-solving under pressure. The escape also highlights a broader truth about confinement. The limitations imposed by walls and guards can be transcended by creativity, courage, and persistence. Ferreira transformed a setting of extreme restriction into a scenario of possibility, demonstrating that the mind's ability to assess, plan, and act is often the greatest tool a human possesses. The jungle, once an obstacle, became both shield and route to liberation. In the annals of history's most daring prison escapes, Antonio Ferreira's breakout stands out for its combination of technical skill, psychological acuity, and environmental mastery. It serves as a reminder that escape is not only a physical act but also an exercise in intelligence, adaptation, and courage. The Brazilian jungle, unforgiving and unyielding, became the stage for a story of human ingenuity triumphing over constraint, a narrative that continues to captivate and inspire. Ferreira's escape from the Amazonian prison is a testament to the extraordinary lengths a determined individual will go to reclaim freedom. It underscores the interplay between environment, human ingenuity, and courage, illustrating that the most remarkable escapes often involve mastering both the man-made and natural worlds. In every sense, this story reminds us that confinement can test the limits of human endurance, but it cannot contain the ingenuity and will of the determined mind. On the morning of September 25, 1983, the walls of Maze Prison, also known as Long Kesh, shook with the audacity of a plan that had been months in preparation. Located in Northern Ireland, Maze Prison was considered one of the most secure facilities in Europe, housing paramilitary prisoners amid the height of the Troubles. Designed to contain men willing to die for ideology, the prison was a labyrinth of high walls, surveillance, and armed guards. Yet, in the early hours of that September day, 38 prisoners staged a breakout, marking the largest prison escape in British history. The escape was meticulously planned and executed by members of the Provisional Irish Republican Army, IRA, who viewed the prison not simply as a physical space of confinement but as a battleground for psychological and political leverage. Unlike conventional escapes, which often rely on opportunistic timing or brute force, the Maze breakout was a carefully choreographed operation involving strategy, weapons, and insider knowledge of the facility. For the IRA prisoners, the prison had become both a fortress and a cage. Maze was built to prevent escape, with reinforced gates, secure cell blocks, armed guards, and constant monitoring. Every corridor, every wing, and every checkpoint was controlled, making movement without authorization nearly impossible. Yet the prisoners studied the patterns of guards, noting moments of reduced vigilance, shifts that could be exploited, and weaknesses in protocols. Observation became the first critical step in their plan. Weapons were smuggled and assembled in secret. Prisoners fashioned pistols, knives, and improvised tools from everyday items, hiding them until the moment of the breakout. Intelligence was gathered from inside and outside the facility. Loyal contacts provided information about guard routines, security protocols, and emergency response capabilities. This preparation reflected the IRA's understanding that escape was as much a psychological and logistical operation as it was a physical one. On the day of the escape, prisoners initiated their plan by taking advantage of work details outside their cell blocks, allowing them access to corridors that led toward the main gate. Using smuggled weapons, they subdued guards, taking control of key checkpoints. The operation was rapid and coordinated. It relied on timing, communication, and precise action. Every participant knew his role, and the chaos of the takeover was carefully orchestrated to prevent panic from undermining the escape. The prisoners then seized vehicles within the compound, allowing them to move more quickly through the prison grounds. They encountered resistance. Guards fired at them, alarms sounded, and communication lines were jammed. But the escapees were prepared for these contingencies. Their plan accounted for multiple forms of interference, demonstrating an understanding of both human and systemic behavior. As they approached the outer perimeter, the prisoners faced the final obstacle: razor wire fences and watchtowers. Improvised tools were employed to cut through barriers, while others provided cover and coordinated movements to prevent being stopped. The breakout required a combination of courage, discipline, and improvisation. One misstep could have resulted in capture or death. Yet the prisoners executed their plan with remarkable precision, exploiting every weakness and moment of confusion. By the end of the day, 38 men had successfully escaped, disappearing into the countryside. Some immediately linked with IRA safe houses, blending into urban or rural areas where local sympathizers provided assistance. Others moved through covert networks established over years of paramilitary activity. The scale of the escape: nearly 46 men breaking out of one of the most secure prisons in the United Kingdom, sent shockwaves through the authorities, exposing vulnerabilities in a system long considered impenetrable. The aftermath was chaotic. Security forces launched a massive manhunt, involving police, military, and intelligence services. Roads were blocked, checkpoints established, and surrounding areas scoured. Yet the escapees' careful planning, combined with their knowledge of Northern Ireland's terrain and support networks, allowed most to evade recapture for months. The event became a symbol of both the IRA's audacity and the limitations of even the most sophisticated security systems. Psychologically, the escape was as powerful as it was physical. It represented a triumph over authority, a disruption of perceived control, and a demonstration that disciplined, coordinated action could overcome formidable obstacles. For the prisoners, it reinforced morale, loyalty, and the belief that meticulous planning could convert the impossible into the achievable. For the authorities, it served as a humbling reminder that confinement is only as effective as its weakest points, often the human element. The Maze prison escape also highlighted the broader socio-political context. These were not ordinary criminals but political prisoners motivated by ideology, willing to risk everything for freedom. Their actions were framed not only as personal survival but as part of a larger struggle, which added layers of complexity to the planning, execution, and response. Escape was both a physical act and a political statement, making the operation unprecedented in its scale and impact. Historically, the Maze breakout is studied for its combination of preparation, execution, and aftermath management. The prisoners had to balance rapid, decisive action with the careful coordination of 38 individuals, all while avoiding detection from guards trained to respond to chaos. It serves as a case study in large-scale escape planning, risk management, and the use of both psychological and physical tactics in high-security environments. The operation's success also underscores the importance of intelligence and communication. Prisoners maintained secrecy for months, coordinated movements, and leveraged both insider knowledge and external assistance. Unlike solo escapes, which rely on individual ingenuity, the Maze breakout required collective discipline and the ability to synchronize actions under extreme stress, reflecting a level of operational sophistication rarely seen in prison history. Ultimately, the 1983 Maze prison escape remains one of the most extraordinary in European history, not because of theatrical elements or improvised tools, but because of scale, precision, and audacity. It illustrates that even when walls are high, fences electrified, and guards vigilant, human ingenuity, discipline, and careful planning can prevail. The Maze breakout's legacy endures in both popular culture and academic study. It serves as a reminder that escape is not simply an act of physical evasion, but a combination of strategy, coordination, and psychological understanding. It shows that even in the most controlled, high-security environments, vulnerabilities exist, and those who exploit them with patience, planning, and courage can achieve the extraordinary. In the early months of 1934, John Dillinger had already established himself as a figure both feared and admired, a man whose criminal exploits, bank robberies, and uncanny ability to evade capture made him the embodiment of the American Depression-era outlaw. By March of that year, Dillinger was in Crown Point, Indiana, incarcerated at the Lake County Jail, a facility notorious for its small size and minimal security measures. What followed would become one of the most audacious and iconic prison escapes in U.S. history. Crown Point Jail, often referred to as the escape-proof jail, was designed more for containment than confrontation. The building was compact, with concrete walls, barred windows, and a solitary holding cell known as the escape-proof cell. Yet, for Dillinger, a man skilled in manipulation, planning, and psychological strategy, no jail could truly hold him. He had already demonstrated an extraordinary ability to read human behavior, exploit weaknesses, and engineer escapes that others could not even imagine. Before we continue, if you're captivated by the story of audacity and cleverness in prison breaks, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment where you're listening from. John Dillinger's story is not just a tale of crime, it's a study in ingenuity, timing, and the art of turning the smallest advantage into a spectacular triumph. Now, let's dive into the night when Dillinger turned a modest jail into the stage for one of history's most legendary escapes. Dillinger's escape from Crown Point was not the result of brute force. Rather, it was an operation of subtlety, preparation, and psychological manipulation. Unlike large facilities, the jail's weaknesses were human and structural: guards who underestimated prisoners, a small staff, and a complacent approach to security. Dillinger recognized these vulnerabilities and began planning, carefully observing guard routines and noting the accessibility of tools and materials that could aid his escape. The centerpiece of Dillinger's plan was a homemade wooden pistol, crafted from wood and blackened to resemble real metal. Over days, he meticulously carved, sanded, and painted the piece, ensuring that it would appear authentic at a glance. The creation of this weapon required both skill and patience. It had to be convincing enough to coerce guards into compliance, and it had to function as a psychological instrument, instilling enough fear to allow Dillinger the necessary control. On the night of March 3, 1934, Dillinger put his plan into action. The cell door, which had been considered impenetrable, became the starting point of his liberation. Armed with the wooden pistol, he confronted the jailer, posing as a dangerous and determined threat. The realism of the weapon, combined with his calm and commanding demeanor, convinced the guard to yield. The encounter was tense, precise, and without bloodshed, an elegant demonstration of manipulation and timing. Once armed, Dillinger navigated the jail's narrow corridors, a place where any misstep could have been fatal. His knowledge of the facility, combined with the element of surprise, allowed him to move quickly and decisively. He liberated fellow inmates, including Harry Pierpont and Charles Mackley, turning a single escape into a coordinated breakout. The movement was choreographed with remarkable precision, illustrating Dillinger's leadership and ability to inspire compliance and confidence under extreme pressure. The escape unfolded with an almost cinematic quality. Dillinger and his associates moved from cell to corridor, seizing keys and neutralizing obstacles. Every action was calculated to minimize confrontation and maximize efficiency. The escape was not simply about leaving the jail. It was a demonstration of psychological dominance over the system and its enforcers. Guards were coerced not through violence alone, but through a careful display of control, timing, and perceived threat. The prisoners then made their way to the jail's exterior. Dillinger's planning extended beyond the building. He had arranged for transportation, timing, and routes that would ensure their evasion of law enforcement. Once outside, the group dispersed, blending into the shadows and taking advantage of the limited police response in the small town. Within hours, Dillinger was free, already planning his next heist, and the legend of his daring had grown exponentially. This escape had consequences that reverberated across Indiana and the nation. It embarrassed local authorities, exposing their underestimation of Dillinger's intelligence and resourcefulness. It also cemented Dillinger's reputation as a master escape artist, capable of exploiting both human psychology and structural vulnerabilities with precision. For the public, he became a symbol of audacity, a folk hero in a time of economic despair, a man who outwitted authority and claimed freedom against the odds. Dillinger's escape techniques were studied by law enforcement, prison administrators, and criminal analysts for decades. They revealed the importance of psychological manipulation, careful observation, and technical creativity in successful escapes. Unlike brute force breakouts, which rely on numbers and aggression, Dillinger's approach emphasized perception, threat, and timing, showing that the mind could be as effective a tool as any physical instrument in the art of liberation. The Crown Point escape also highlighted the interplay between preparation and improvisation. While the wooden pistol and planning were deliberate, Dillinger had to adapt in real time to unexpected developments, guards' movements, locked doors, and unforeseen obstacles. His ability to adjust, improvise, and maintain control under pressure exemplifies why he is remembered as one of history's most skilled escape artists. In the broader context of American criminal history, this escape represents a turning point. It showcased the potential for ingenuity over conventional security measures and demonstrated that small, human-scale facilities could be vulnerable to careful study, planning, and psychological strategy. It also influenced the design and procedures of future correctional institutions, prompting improvements in security, oversight, and guard training. The Crown Point escape is not merely a tale of liberty. It is a study in human ingenuity, psychological insight, and precise execution. Dillinger's actions illustrate that successful escapes often rely more on intellect and observation than on physical prowess alone. Every element of his breakout, from the creation of a convincing wooden pistol to the coordination of fellow inmates, demonstrates an understanding of human behavior and structural weakness that few could replicate. In the end, John Dillinger's breakout from Crown Point Jail remains one of the most iconic prison escapes in American history. It exemplifies how careful planning, audacity, and psychological mastery can transform a seemingly mundane incarceration into a stage for ingenuity and defiance. Dillinger's escape did not merely liberate him from prison walls, it elevated him to legendary status, cementing a story of cunning, courage, and creativity that continues to captivate historians, criminologists, and the public alike. During the American Civil War, Richmond, Virginia, was more than the capital of the Confederacy. It was a center of imprisonment, strategy, and survival. One of the most infamous facilities for Union prisoners was Libby Prison, a brick building originally designed as a warehouse, later converted into a Confederate prison. The facility became notorious for overcrowding, disease, and harsh conditions, where Union officers were confined in cramped, unsanitary cells. Yet, in February 1864, a daring escape would take place that became one of the most remarkable episodes of ingenuity and courage in Civil War history: the Libby Prison Tunnel Escape. Union officers, held in captivity at Libby, faced conditions that pushed men to their limits. Starvation, disease, and brutal oversight created an environment where hope was scarce and morale fragile. Guards were strict, and security was designed to prevent exactly the type of breakout that the prisoners would attempt. Yet, in the depths of despair, a group of men began to plan a desperate, audacious escape that relied not on force but on ingenuity and meticulous patience. The plan began in late 1863, months before the actual escape. Led by Lieutenant Colonel Thomas E. Rose and a cadre of officers, prisoners began secretly excavating a tunnel from the basement of the prison. The project was fraught with obstacles. The basement was small, poorly ventilated, and constantly monitored by guards. The men had to work quietly, conceal their activity from both prisoners and captors, and manage the structural integrity of the tunnel to prevent collapse. Every step required ingenuity, coordination, and extraordinary patience. Before the dig could even begin, prisoners had to acquire tools, often fashioned from scraps of wood, metal, and bits of crockery. They had to conceal these instruments carefully, avoid detection during roll calls, and coordinate labor shifts so that digging could continue without arousing suspicion. The tunnel itself would eventually stretch over 50 feet, extending beneath walls and into a wooded area outside the prison perimeter. For weeks, the men worked in secrecy, often in near total darkness, shoveling dirt into pockets and bags that were then disposed of surreptitiously throughout the prison yard. Timing, coordination, and patience were the keys to success. Prisoners had to maintain morale despite disease, hunger, and constant threat of discovery. The psychological pressure was immense. A single misstep could result in brutal punishment or death. Yet the officers persevered, their minds focused on the promise of freedom that lay at the tunnel's end. In this environment, ingenuity became as critical as courage. Each man needed to understand both the physical and strategic challenges of their task. By February 9, 1864, the tunnel was complete. Its exit was located outside the prison walls, near a wooded area that provided natural cover. On the night of the escape, the prisoners moved quietly, using the tunnel to slip past guards and patrols. The operation relied on precise sequencing. Men had to travel one at a time or in small groups, avoid leaving evidence, and maintain communication to ensure that no one became trapped or lost in the dark. Approximately 109 Union officers successfully escaped through the tunnel, disappearing into the surrounding landscape. Their path to freedom was not without danger. Confederate search parties combed the woods, and unfamiliar terrain threatened misdirection and capture. Many escapees relied on local sympathizers, natural cover, and sheer endurance to reach Union lines. Despite these hazards, the tunnel escape is remembered as a triumph of planning, ingenuity, and human determination. The Libby prison escape demonstrated several remarkable aspects of human capability under extreme stress. First, it highlighted the power of collective coordination. The prisoners worked together, pooling knowledge, labor, and ingenuity to overcome challenges that would have been impossible individually. Second, It showed that strategic patience, weeks and months of careful, quiet preparation, could yield extraordinary results. Finally, it emphasized the ability of human ingenuity to turn ordinary materials into tools capable of subverting even the most secure facilities. The escape had immediate consequences for both the Confederate authorities and the Union forces. Confederate officials were stunned, embarrassed by the breach, and forced to reevaluate the security protocols of Libby Prison and other facilities. For the Union, the successful breakout became a source of morale, proof that courage, planning, and determination could overcome even the harshest conditions of captivity. News of the escape traveled quickly, inspiring both soldiers and civilians alike. The Libby Prison tunnel escape also highlighted the interplay of physical skill, mental acuity, and psychological endurance. Prisoners were not only digging and moving through tight underground spaces, they were also navigating fear, deprivation, and the ever-present threat of discovery. The successful completion of the escape required both technical competence and emotional resilience, demonstrating that survival in extreme circumstances depends on a combination of mind and body. Historians studying the Libby escape note its significance as both a military and human achievement. Unlike conventional escapes that rely on distraction or force, the tunnel required extended planning, engineering, and teamwork, effectively transforming a confined and oppressive environment into a conduit for freedom. The operation is frequently cited as a prime example of ingenuity overcoming structural and environmental constraints. The escape also underscores the broader theme of human resourcefulness under duress. Inmates of Libby Prison faced starvation, disease, and the constant threat of violence, yet they transformed despair into action. By leveraging their skills, knowledge of the prison layout, and coordination, they turned confinement into opportunity. This story illustrates the extraordinary lengths to which individuals will go to reclaim liberty, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles. For the escapees, freedom was only the beginning. Many had to navigate hostile territory, avoid Confederate forces, and traverse unfamiliar terrain to reach safety. The journey tested their survival skills, ingenuity, and ability to improvise under pressure. Their success became a testament not only to the tunnel and the escape plan but to human determination and adaptability. In the broader context of Civil War history, the Libby Prison tunnel escape remains one of the most extraordinary examples of prisoners reclaiming freedom. It stands alongside other notable escapes not only for its scale but for the careful, patient, and creative methods employed. The operation demonstrated that with determination, strategy, and teamwork, even the most secure confinement could be overcome. Ultimately, the Libby Prison tunnel escape is a story of human courage, ingenuity, and resilience. It illustrates how careful observation, planning, and resourcefulness can transform a desperate situation into one of triumph. By combining engineering, teamwork, and psychological acumen, the Union officers turned a seemingly hopeless captivity into a historic escape, leaving an enduring legacy of audacity and skill in the annals of prison break history.